What if I told you that the most powerful law enforcement agencies in the world were turned into weapons against an American presidential candidate, and that the people responsible are still walking free today? This is the Russia hoax, and this is the truth they don't want you to know. In 2016, the Federal Bureau of Investigation opened an unprecedented counterintelligence operation against the Donald Trump presidential campaign. They called it Crossfire Hurricane, and from the very beginning, the fix was in. The investigation, launched on July 31, 2016, just months before the presidential election, was supposedly triggered by a tip about Trump campaign advisor George Papadopoulos. But that was just the cover story. The real fuel came from a dossier, a collection of salacious, unverified allegations about Donald Trump that had been commissioned and paid for by Hillary Clinton's campaign and the Democratic National Committee. They laundered the money through a law firm. That law firm hired a research company called Fusion GPS, and Fusion GPS hired a British spy named Christopher Steele. Steele had been paid to dig up dirt on Trump, and the FBI used that dirt, opposition research paid for by Trump's political opponent never independently verified, as the foundation to surveil an American citizen. His name was Carter Page, a former naval intelligence officer, an American, and beginning in October of 2016, the FBI secretly obtained warrants from the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, a secret court with no defense counsel, no adversarial process, to spy on Carter Page, and through him to spy on the entire Trump campaign. But here's what makes this story worse than Watergate. The FBI agents running this operation knew the dossier was unreliable. Internal emails, text messages, and documents that came out through congressional investigations and the Inspector General's report showed that senior FBI officials privately admitted they couldn't verify the core claims against Trump. Yet they told the FISA court in sworn applications that the information was credible and accurate. Peter Strzok, that name should be burned into the history books. He was the deputy head of counterintelligence at the FBI. He sent over 10,000 text messages to his colleague and romantic partner Lisa Page that were filled with anti-Trump bias so extreme that even the Justice Department's own Inspector General called them deeply troubling. In August of 2016, while leading the investigation into Trump, Strzok texted Lisa Page, "We'll stop him." He was talking about Donald Trump becoming president, an FBI counterintelligence agent, using the power of federal surveillance law, pledging to stop a presidential candidate from winning an election. James Comey, the FBI director, briefed President-elect Trump about the dossier in January of 2017. Yet, as John Durham's investigation later confirmed, Comey had already been told by his own people that there were serious problems with the dossier's sourcing. He went ahead with the briefing anyway, and immediately afterward, a leak to CNN confirmed the briefing had occurred, giving BuzzFeed the pretext to publish the entire unverified dossier to the world. This was not a mistake. This was orchestrated. For the next 3 years, the American media ran wall-to-wall coverage of the Russia collusion story. MSNBC, CNN, the New York Times, the Washington Post. They received leaks from government sources. They published story after story, claiming Trump had secretly colluded with Russia to steal the 2016 election. Rachel Maddow spent hundreds of broadcast hours covering Russia. The New York Times and the Washington Post won Pulitzer Prizes for their Russia reporting, prizes they have never returned, even after the story completely fell apart. Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel in May of 2017. He spent 2 years and $40 million taxpayer dollars investigating. And in March of 2019, his final report concluded, no collusion, no coordination between the Trump campaign and Russia to influence the election. No conspiracy, no collusion. 2 years, $40 million, and nothing. But while the investigation dragged on, the damage was done. Careers were destroyed. Trump associates were prosecuted for process crimes. Things like allegedly lying to investigators that had nothing to do with Russia. Paul Manafort, Michael Flynn, George Papadopoulos. Their lives were turned upside down, not because they colluded with Russia, but because they got caught in the blast radius of a politically motivated investigation. Enter John Durham. In October of 2020, Attorney General William Barr appointed John Durham, a veteran federal prosecutor from Connecticut, as special counsel to investigate the origins of the Russia investigation. Durham spent 4 years following the evidence. His final report, released in May of 2023, was the most damning indictment of FBI leadership in modern American history. Durham found that the FBI opened Crossfire Hurricane with minimal factual basis. He found that FBI officials had received information warning them that the Clinton campaign might be trying to create a false narrative tying Trump to Russia, and they ignored it. He found that the Steele dossier was never verified before being used in FISA court applications to surveil an American citizen. Durham wrote that the FBI, quote, failed to uphold its fundamental obligation to the American people. The investigation suffered from what Durham called confirmation bias. FBI agents were so convinced Trump was guilty that they ignored every piece of evidence pointing the other way. Igor Danchenko, the Russian-born analyst who was Christopher Steele's primary source, the man whose unverified claims ended up in FISA court applications used to spy on Carter Page, turned out to have been an FBI source himself. The FBI was literally paying the very man whose unverified stories it was using to justify spying on the Trump campaign. Kevin Kleinsmith, an FBI lawyer, pleaded guilty to falsifying a government document to obtain a FISA warrant extension on Carter Page. He altered an email, changed it to say that Page was not a CIA source, when in fact Page had been working with the CIA. He lied to a federal court. His punishment? 1 year of probation, no prison time. 1 year of probation for falsifying surveillance documents against an American citizen. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the two-tier justice system in this country. Here is what the Russia hoax tells us about the state of American democracy. The most powerful law enforcement agencies in the world can be turned into weapons against any political opponent. The mainstream media will amplify government leaks rather than protect American citizens from government abuse. And accountability, when it finally arrives, will be so weak as to be meaningless. The men who designed and executed this operation, James Comey, Andrew McCabe, Peter Strzok, John Brennan, James Clapper. Most of them have book deals, television contracts. They are celebrated as heroes of the resistance. Not one of them has been prosecuted for what they did. The Durham report named names. It documented the misconduct. It provided a detailed roadmap for accountability. But the same Department of Justice that was weaponized against Trump chose not to bring major charges. This is precisely why the America First movement exists. Not because any politician is perfect. Not because one party is always right. But because when the instruments of government power, the FBI, the Department of Justice, the intelligence community, can be turned against any citizen, against any presidential candidate, then none of us are safe. Think about what actually happened here. The leadership of the FBI used an unverified document paid for by the opposing campaign to obtain secret court orders to spy on American citizens connected to a presidential campaign. They hid the document's political origins from federal judges. They ignored internal warnings that the whole thing might be a political operation. And when the truth finally came out, when the Mueller report found no collusion, when the Inspector General exposed the FISA abuses, when John Durham documented the institutional failures, the ringleaders walked away with book deals and TV contracts. If this had been done to a Democrat candidate, if Republican operatives had funded a phony dossier, gotten the FBI to spy on a Democrat campaign, and then covered it all up, it would have been called the greatest scandal in American history. It would be in every textbook. There would be movies about it. Instead, most Americans still don't know the full story, because the mainstream media, the same media that won Pulitzer Prizes for reporting the hoax as true, has no interest in explaining how badly they got it wrong. The Russia hoax was not a mistake. It was not a misunderstanding. It was a coordinated effort by people inside the United States government to destroy a political opponent using the tools of federal law enforcement. And the only reason you know about any of this today is because Americans refused to stop asking questions. Americans who demanded the truth. Americans who wouldn't let this story be buried. That's what we do at America First Daily. Join us. Subscribe to America First Daily and stay informed. We dig into the stories the mainstream media buries. We name the names. We follow the facts wherever they lead. We hold power accountable, because if we don't, nobody will. If this is the kind of deep dive reporting you believe America needs, hit that subscribe button right now. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story. And share this video with someone who still trusts what they're hearing from the mainstream press. Because the truth is out there. It always has been. And together, we're going to keep finding it. America First Daily. Subscribe. Stay informed. Stay free.